Welcome back to the Microbit Basics course. I'm Helen. Have you ever played the game Rock, Paper, Scissors? Today, we're going to make that game using code. To do that, we're going to learn about variables, loops, and boolean operators. By the end of this video, you will learn about logic and loop commands. You'll learn how to create and use variables. You'll use block code to create boolean operators, and you'll use this knowledge to create your own rock, paper, scissors game. Are you ready? Loops allow sequences of code to be repeated. For example, the repeat command, found in the loops section, is a basic loop. By changing the value in the command, we change the number of times the code will repeat. The Make Code block editor lets us switch between block view and JavaScript view. Let's take a look at what this simple loop looks like in JavaScript. Encourage students to look at the block code they're creating in JavaScript view, as this will get them thinking about the code that they're creating. They'll soon realize that it's not that far removed from the blocks that they're using. Now, let's think about the conditions of a rock, paper, scissors game. If player A has a rock and player B has a rock, then the game continues. If player A has paper and player B has a rock, then player A wins. Let's create a variable called item for our three possible choices. Open the variables section, choose Create a Variable, and name it item. It should look like this. To make the game more realistic, we're going to use the onShake block from the input section and pick random from the math section. Now, let's use these three blocks together. They should look like this. This is how every time we shake the microbit, it will randomly choose 1, 2, or 3, which we will relate to paper, rock, or scissors. To have more control over this loop, we need to use a conditional statement. This is essentially a loop that checks against certain conditions. If those conditions are met, the loop will stop, and any actions assigned to those conditional statements will execute. In order to build the game, we will need a conditional loop known as the if command and the comparison block, both to be found under the logic section. We'll also need the item variable we created earlier. The random value assigned to the variable in the previous step can now be processed using Boolean logic by using the if-then-else command block. To do this, you need to build the logic command block in the workspace, so that it processes the required number of conditional statements, which for our game are 3, rock, paper, or scissors. You can add a conditional statement by simply clicking the plus sign in the block. Now, let's put all the blocks together. This is how your code should look. Remember, as we've already checked if the variable has the value 1 or 2, the final possibility, 3, does not need to be checked with an if command, as the final else condition will be generated automatically. This would mean that when you shake the microbit, it will pick a random value from 1 to 3, and then will show on the display as the paper, rock, or scissors icon. Good! Now, let's test our code on the simulator before downloading the hex file onto the microbit. Great! Now we're ready for the game. Now that we've learned how to use loops, variables, and boolean logic, why don't you make your own project that uses these coding concepts? Perhaps a set of digital dice. Look at the link for help on how to code your own dice. Think about how many conditional statements you'll need to use, and don't forget to make a variable. I'll see you in the next project, where we're going to learn how to create audio.